right. We're on page 10, right?
It's page 10 or 128.
Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Sounds good tonight, doesn't it? That's all I'll say about that. It is good to be here together. How good it is when we come together to pray together, to celebrate together, to mourn together, to just be together. Whether you are here in person or you are here virtually, it is good to be with you. I'm Rabbi Heath Wattenmaker. This is Cantor Jamie Spall. And welcome to Congregation Beth Am. We'll continue our service on page 2 as we begin Shabbat and face the darkness outside. We bring light into our celebration. So we'll begin on page 2 or 120 with the kindling of our Shabbat candles. I'd like to call up our upcoming bat mitzvah, Sammy Waxman, who will celebrate her bat mitzvah in early March, along with her family, Suzanne and Matt.
No. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
So Sammy, I'll ask you and your parents to stay up here, and I'll give you this Kiddush cup. You can lead us in Kiddush on page 5 or 123.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu l'shabbat kodsho Be'ahava u'beratzon hinhilanu Zikaron lemase Tanu. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
Mazel tov. Continue our service on page 20 or 138. We sing the song Lecha Dodi that the mystics of Tzfat used to walk out into the fields as the sun would set with their arms open wide, singing, "Come, my beloved," to bring and greet Shabbat, welcoming Shabbat into their midst, just as we do. We'll sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, and we'll rise for the 9th verse and face the entrance in the sun that maybe set a little while ago. But page 20 or 138.
Lecha Dodi, Likerat Kala, Hene Shabbat, Nekavela. Lecha Dodi, Likerat Kala, Hene Shabbat, Nekavela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. Hishmianu el hamiyuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad. L'shem u'tiferet ve'litchila. Lecha Dodi, Likerat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Nekavela. Lecha Dodi, Likerat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Nekavela. Likrat Shabbat, lechu v'neilcha. Ki hi mekor haberacha. Merosh mikerdem nesvucha. Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, yalala, 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 Be'Shabbat, Nekavela. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, yalala, 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 Be'Shabbat, Nekavela. Yailai, hitareri, hitareri, ki ma'orech kuni ori, uri, uri, shir daveri, kevod Adonai alayich niglal. Alecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, yalala, 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 Mei Shabbat, Nekavela. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, yalala, 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 Mei Shabbat, Nekavela. Yailai, boi v'shalom, ateret ba'ala, gam b'simcha u'v'tzola, toch
days when the temple stood in Jerusalem, there was a tradition that the mourners would come later to the temple service, and they'd come through a different door than the rest of those that were coming to worship in the temple. And they'd walk through a different door because traditionally you'd walk through the temple in a circle. And so if you entered a different door, you were actually going another direction, so that everybody coming to worship would know who the mourners in their midst were. And the tradition of that continues. And one way we demonstrate comfort to those who have come from a house of mourning is we offer these traditional words to the mourners in our midst. Hamakom yenachem etchem betoch sha'ar avelei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you and all those who mourn among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. We'll continue with our prayer of community, the Baruch Hu, page 28 or 146.
Yai, lai, lai, yai, lai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, lai, yai, lai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Ya, lai, lai, ya, lai, 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 yai, lai. Ya, lai, 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 yai. La, lai, 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 lai. Ya, lai, lai, ya, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, ya, lai, la, lai. Yai, la, lai, la, lai, lai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
So if you pull out your song sheet on side A, song 2 is Roll into Dark, our prayer for the evening, our Ma'ariv, our Avim chant. And I want to invite up a couple of our veteran Zimriya members who next week are celebrating their B'nai Mitzvah, Ella and Sam Bergman, to
You're gonna help with
lead
the
us in
harmonies. Okay. Okay, here we go. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns
on page 34 or 152, words of Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
You can be seated. It's a pleasure to have Ella and Sam lead us in Ve'ahavta, page 36 or 154.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על רבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים אלוהיהם אני אדוני אלוהיהם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אלוהיכם אמת.
Continue on page 40 or 158, Mi Chamocha, our song of redemption.
All right, wait, here we go. Ya bye bye bim bim bam, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya bye bye bim bim bam, ya ba 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 bim bam, ay 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 ay, ya ba 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 bim bam, ay 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 ay, ya ba 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 bim bam, mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, no radilot osef ele, no radilot osef ele. Ma'alechutecha ra'u banecha, bokeh כי פד אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, גל ישראל.
On number 3, song number 3 on side A, we sing our evening prayer. We ask God to shelter us. We recognize how fragile shelter can be. So we got to pray for it every night, just to remind ourselves that we can be bringers of shelter, bringers of peace, and also recipients of shelter when we need it as well.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom. Ve'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath your wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. Continue on page 44, 162, our song for Shabbat connected to the memory of the Exodus.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת.
Pray as if everything depended on God. Act as if everything depends on you. We'll enter the Amidah together on page 46 or 164. We'll sing the first few blessings together and then take some time for our own silent prayer through page 63. You can be seated once you've finished your prayer, but at this time I invite you, if you're able, to please rise. Page 48.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Koneh HaKol V'Zocher Chastei Avot Imahot U'Mevi Geula Livnei Vneihem Le'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai Mechayei hakol atah Rav le'hoshia Mashiv haruach u'morid
hagashem
Mechalkel chaim bechesed Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim Somech noflim verofei cholim Umatir asurim Umekayem emunato Lishenei afar Michamocha bal gevurot Umido melach Melech memit umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman atah lachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh hakol
52.
Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh U'kadoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha selah Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
Continue to ourselves.
page 62.
There's strength that we draw in gathering together and being together and being part of a community of support. And so as we turn to words of Misha Berach, our prayer for healing, we turn not just to our community, but we turn to all those who have come before us. And we tap into the strength and the merit of our ancestors. May the ones who blessed our ancestors bless us and those in need of healing, with healing of body and healing of spirit. And so tonight, as we enter into this prayer of healing, this moment of healing, we are thinking of Gil Abramson, Yolanda Azucena, Miles Bennett, Efrat Blatt, Alex Brodsky, Susan Carlson, Rudy Andrizzi, Gary Geschwind, Marty Gelman, Selena Glader, Stephanie Glickman, Benedict Gross, Diana Guthaner, Moritz Huppert, Donald Korn, Bernie Marcus, Edwin Merlos, Sophia Palisban, Rabbi Lori Phillips, Harriet Shane, Stephen Abraham Simon, David Baruch Ben Simona, Amanda Smith, Matthew Smith, Len Williams, and Katie Wilson. And if there are others that you're thinking of, I invite you to share their names at this time.
Judith 05, yeah.
Turn to words of Misha Berach, page 253 or 371.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing
Like many of you on Monday night, Amy and I were glued to our TV, watching the horrific news come through about the shooting at 2 farms in Half Moon Bay that took the lives of 7 Latino and Asian American farm workers. Over the years, for my family, and I'm sure for many of you as well, Half Moon Bay has long been a delightful place to visit. The beach air, the cute restaurants, pumpkin patches and farms for the kids. It's nearby. It's right in our backyard. This one felt close, too close. And that feeling was further compounded by the shooting in Oakland that same night, or the shooting that took the lives of 11 people just 2 days earlier in Monterey Park in Southern California, targeting the Asian American and Pacific Islander community that frequented the Star Ballroom Dance Studio. Compounded further by the other 39 mass shootings in 2023 alone. It is January 27th. And the terrible news coming out of East Jerusalem today of a shooting in a synagogue there taking the lives of at least 8 worshipers. It all feels like too much pain and suffering and violence. And it all feels somehow unstoppable or inevitable, like a fact we must accept. Gun violence is just a part of living in the United States of America. There's a post going around social media that captures the cyclical nature of this violence in which our country seems to be trapped. Some title it the Columbine effect or the cycle of gun violence in America. There's a mass shooting with major news coverage, followed by a general sense of outrage and elected officials and others that send their thoughts and prayers to the victims' families, followed by some elected officials who argue that it's too early to talk about gun control now, or maybe some gun laws are debated. And then life seems to return to normal until the next mass shooting starts the cycle all over again. In this week's Torah portion, we read of a different cycle of violence and destruction. In Parashat Bo, we find the last 3 plagues that led to the Israelites' freedom from slavery in Egypt. But putting the plagues aside for a moment, I want to focus on how the Torah explains Pharaoh's response to each of the plagues. I think it offers a powerful warning for us in this moment. If you're familiar with the story, you may be thinking of the cycle of the actions of each plague. Moses goes to Pharaoh, pleads with him to let the Israelites go free. Pharaoh says no. God sends a plague, and the cycle repeats itself again and again. For Pharaoh, each of these plagues do seem to catch his attention, and as they get increasingly more destructive, he does seem to consider agreeing to Moses' request, or at least some part of Moses' request in some of the instances. But as Nechama Leibowitz points out, the great biblical commentator, after each of the first 7 plagues that we read about in last week's portion, we read that Pharaoh's heart is either hardened, vayechazak lev paro, or Pharaoh remains stubborn, vayechabed et libo. Those verbs are powerful, chazak and kaved. His heart grew firm and heavy, suggesting that he somehow became incapable of sensing pain or misery, that he became more and more set in his obstinance. And as a result, his country and his people continued to suffer greater and greater destruction. In this week's portion, the language changes slightly. Rather than Pharaoh hardening his own heart, or his heart hardening itself after the plagues of locusts and deep darkness, we read that God hardens Pharaoh's heart. It's a troubling theological statement. Maimonides understands these verses as a warning. God did not force Pharaoh to choose evil, casting off each of the plagues as mere inconveniences. It was Pharaoh's own doing, over and over again. Once he persisted in his course of action, it became more and more irresistible. Reading this in a slightly different way, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, who reads this through the lens of human psychology, teaches that one only gets so many chances of hardening their own heart before it becomes locked in, that our voice of conscience gets quieter and quieter over time until it's not even present. We find a powerful warning in Pharaoh's example here. If we get into the practice of hardening our hearts, of allowing ourselves to accept a given situation as just the way it is, then we risk losing our ability to even try to create change. We harden our hearts when we say to ourselves that the problem of gun violence in America is too hard or too big. We harden our hearts when we give in to the partisan rhetoric that gun violence can't be solved or that there's a lack of political will. We harden our hearts when we say it's too complex or too entrenched in the American psyche. We harden our hearts when we say to ourselves that this violence is just a byproduct of the times, then hunker down and hope that the next one's not too close. What will it take to crack open our collective hearts and demand that things must change? What would it take for us to imagine if it could be different? I know our hearts are breaking for the individuals whose lives were taken. As our tradition teaches, one who takes a life, it is as though they have destroyed the universe. And one who saves a life, it is as though they have saved the universe. It is overwhelming to think of the universes that have been destroyed by gun violence in this country. As Jews, we recognize the sanctity and godliness in every human life. And as Jews, when faced with trauma, we respond with hope. As we read in Psalm 30, we turn our mourning into dancing. Our tradition calls us to get to work, to not allow our hearts to become hardened and closed off from the suffering in the world, but to get to work to bring about change. We can call our senators and representatives. We can connect with organizations like the Reform Movement's Religious Action Center or Everytown for Gun Safety, making strides in advocacy. We can research the different pieces of legislation that have been presented over the years to require background checks or ban assault weapons. We can understand better why they have failed. We can talk to those who might think differently than we might, but who are also tired of this terrible violence, and start to find ways to work together to make our country safer. On this International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we Jews know the danger of what happens when enough people harden their hearts and remain silent. May our hearts break open tonight with the news of each of these tragedies, and may we continue to speak out and find ways to take action. Shabbat Shalom. That call to action is echoed in the words of Aleinu L'Shabeach. Aleinu L'Shabeach. It is upon us. It is on our shoulders, not at some far-off place. So I'll ask you to rise if you are able as we turn to Aleinu L'Shabeach, page 282 or 586 at the bottom of the page.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. All my life
can be seated. As we prepare for our prayer of memory, read these words by Rabbi Chaim Stern on page 289. The light of life is a finite flame. Like the Shabbat candles, life is kindled, it burns, it glows. It is radiant with warmth and beauty, but soon it fades. Its substance is consumed, and it is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen. The flames dance and our lives are full. But as night follows day, the candle of our life burns down and gutters. There is an end to the flames. We see no more and are no more seen. Yet we do not despair, for we are more than a memory slowly fading into darkness. With our lives we give life. Something of us can never die. We move in the eternal cycle of darkness and death, of light and life. As we turn to the words of Mourner's Kaddish on page 294, as I read the name of your friend or loved one, I invite you to rise in their honor and remain standing. This week we're in the period of Shiva, the first week of mourning, for Michael Zeidenberg, the husband of Iveta, and Max Maltzman, the grandson of Charlene and Richard Maltzman. We're in the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning, for Eleanor Kaplan, Michael Shapiro, Harold Muckamal, Adrian Lee Brookstone, Maxine Stromberg, Ann Ozer, Sandy Fine, and Milton Siegel. And this Shabbat marks the Yartzeit, the anniversary of death, for Gloria Acker, Milton Adler, Lois Hertz Adler, Dennis Agay, Edith Abrams, Kalman Barak, Mr. Carl Bauman, Lila Bine, Hyman Berg, Florence Burson, Jerry Blum, Catherine Sheeline, Branston Harriet Brown, Rebecca Brownstein, Barbara Cantor, Piedad Cifuentes, David Corman, Alvin Davis, Josephine DePue, Jack Dolson, Irving Dondick, Duncan Douglas, Rose Drucker, Sam Fetterman, Richard Fishback, Valerie Joan Fox, Mary Friedman Ronis, Rachel Futterwhite, Martha Rottenberg Gallagher, Stu Gans, Ruth Gerlich, Beverly Gerlich, Gerald Goldberg, Mark Hauser, Lois Moskowitz Goldberg, Sylvia Gordon, Mildred Greenwald, Robert Groschel, Judy Groen, Bernice Gruber, Al Haas, Harry Hecht, Samuel Heeger, Clara Heilman, David Hellman, Eugene Hurst, Milton Hollenberg, Margit Kalmar, Alan Kaplan, Rosalie Carlin, Bernard Katz, Florence Katz, Zelik Havenson, Miriam Salter Clapper, Oscar Irving Klein, Laura Klein, Emmanuel Kors, Irving Kosakoff, Sanford I. Lack, Sylvia Latman, Ethel Levine, Molly Lyon, Patrick James Martin, Anna Moskowitz, Larry Nagin, Frank Nyman, Bernard Orumland, Gay Passel, Elisa Powell, George Ramrus, Arnold Marvin Richter, Muriel Roston, Morton Rubenstein, Lillian Salter, Prolet Gerson Schneider, Ralph Schwartz, Aaron Schaefer, Leonore Shapira, Anthony Schindler, Sandra Schindler, Sherman Shore, Bertha Siegel, Roy Slotnick, Stanley Srago, Saul Srago, Lauren Stein, Robert Teichner, Konya Tuchinskaya, Al Warren, Jack Weber, Alan Weber, Doris Weissman, Teresa Wertheimer, Antoinette Wolf, Chava Zbrovskaya, and Ann Zolman. We add to those names the 11 victims of the shooting at the Star Ballroom Dance Studio in Monterey Park on Saturday, and the 7 victims in Half Moon Bay, and the 1 victim in the shooting at the gas station in Oakland on Monday night. We also recall all those lost who perished in the Holocaust as we mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day. I'll invite others who are thinking of someone to rise and share their names at this time as well. And we rise as a community of strength and support as we read the words of Kaddish on page 294 or 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei dekudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace on high bring peace to us and comfort to all who are bereaved. We say together, amen. You may be seated. A word about our tzedakah box this month. As you know, every month we go back and forth between an organization doing important work in Israel and a local organization. This month, we are supporting the Israeli organization Tzedek Centers, which was established in 2016 to strive to promote democracy, equality, and solidarity in Israeli society. They run 8 hubs around the country and engage in community organizing, professional fieldwork, and activist training. And they envision opening centers in every city in Israel, centers that will be a home to any gender, ethnic group, or socioeconomic status. So I encourage you to give generously. You can, if you're here in person, you can put money in the tzedakah box. You can donate online on our website or through Venmo or Beth-Am. And I urge you to give generously if you're able. Closing song, a prayer for peace. Od yavo shalom aleinu, may peace come upon us and may it come soon. Page 353 or 657.
Od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, ve'al kulam. Od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, ve'al kulam. Salam aleinu ve'al kol olam. Salam, shalom. Salam, salam aleinu ve'al kol olam. Salam, shalom. Why don't we stand up, everyone? Od yavo shalom aleinu. Od yavo shalom aleinu. Od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Od yavo shalom aleinu. Od yavo shalom aleinu. Od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam, salam aleinu ve'al kol olam. Salam, shalom. Salam, salam aleinu ve'al kol olam. Salam, shalom. Od yavo shalom aleinu. Od yavo shalom aleinu. Od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam.
bless our challah, I want to invite Sammy back up here, and Ella and Sam to lead us in Motzi.
We also have some other kids over
And
there.
yeah,
If you're-
anybody else
Would you guys
who
want to come up?
is 13 or under, come on up. Don't be shy.
Or 14.
Or 14. It's okay. Strength in numbers. Strength in numbers.
Come up. You'll help us
Right.
out. And then you get some of the yummy challah. You guys have been participating so nicely. It's wonderful. All
All
right.
right, come on up.
You guys ready to lead Hamotzi for us? Here we go.
Come on. Here we go.
Ready?
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.